mean, come on. It's pretty awesome, okay? Problem was, back then, zombies weren't cool like they are now, okay? And so I had somebody who tested this in front of a bunch of 7-year-olds, and I had this zombie walk up, and it was the, you know, the classic bird cage thing on a rubber band with the bird on one side and a cage on the other one. It'd spin around to look like the bird was in the cage. I had a zombie walk up and go, and I had a narrator doing like a Christopher Walken impersonation going, now for zombie science. And this zombie going, doing this. And the trick worked, and I'm like, this is great. We tested this in front of a bunch of 7-year-olds, and they're like, what the hell is a zombie? You know, why haven't you people warned me about this? There are zombies. They're like, did you, science, how do I protect myself? And so it was like, all right, maybe, now I think a bit different. Kids know what zombies are, you know, but that was before. It was like I love things like Bigfoot and stuff like that, and it can be, I made the mistake too, like I used, well, I would do this thing with liquid nitrogen where I drink liquid nitrogen, and it's a real trick. There's no gimmick to it, other than my sheer stupidity in trying it. And I would have Bigfoot come out and bring me my props because I needed to use Bigfoot later on in my close-up show. It'll make sense, trust me. But when Bigfoot walks out to hand you your props, you're like, now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk about science, da-da-da-da-da. It's like, well, it's a Bigfoot. It's like, and like in my world, that's normal. Which says a lot.
Can you talk a little bit about how fiction has influenced your magic, and maybe the opposite, how your magic has influenced your fiction? Just let me throw in here, if you're just tuning in, Andrew has this double life where he's actually a best-selling fiction author in addition to a world-class and prolific magic creator. So this is an interesting question because you do both so well.
You know, when you step away from something, part of the other thing is always going to be with you. When you're in magic and then you go off to college and you study chemistry or psychology or whatever, and you go learn something else, some of the skills that come into play an effect on that. If you're a magician and then you go to college and you have to go give a presentation or you get a job, it's easier for us because we're magicians and we're so used to having to do, you know, how many of you have been asked to do presentations that weren't magic related, and after you've been doing magic, it was so easy because you're so used to worrying about like card tricks and where your pinky is and all this, and all of a sudden, all you have to do is get up in front of people and talk? It's like, shah. So for me, you can apply that in a lot of places. You know, what does that happen? And so in magic, you know, for a long time, you know, I'd listen to people I really respected talk about storytelling and what story really meant and not being patter. And then when I started telling stories and realizing that a really good story is you know, show not tell. You know, you don't say, you know, they walked in, you know, it was a rich person's house. You would say the lawn, you know, was 50 feet long from the driveway to the mailbox. From there it was this, you know, it was 5 stories tall. There was a Bugatti and this, and you start describing these things and you put this much more powerful image into somebody's head. And so for magic, the idea was, okay, if you realize how you can use subtleties to create imagery for people, then you can make stuff stronger. You know, Darren Brown is, I think, one of the finest magicians working today. And, you know, his technique, most of it is out there for you to read or for you to look at. But the real craft is the story of who he is, the story of the presentation, and everything leading up when they come up on stage and what you see happen there. And so I think that for me, you know, what I brought from fiction into magic was certainly that really trying to break down a story into the idea. For me, the formula is conflict. What's the conflict? How do I do this? The storytelling of the idea of showing and not telling. And then from, you know, the way magic played into my storytelling is, you know, on a very simple level, the second to last book I wrote called Angel Killer, available on Amazon right now, involves a female FBI agent from a magic background who gets pulled into a case where the villain, the bad guy, is a guy pulling off these big, huge scale murders that look like they're magic effects, and they're fooling people. And so I was able just to use the technique to tell a good story. I remember telling an entertaining story for me. It was one of the top-rated thrillers on Amazon, I'll just say that. That helped from that point of view, but also in magic we learn about pacing and timing. And so for magic, I looked at watching myself perform and cringing. And the thing that made me cringe the most, other than horrible speech patterns, everything else, was how long it took me to get from one trick to the next and all the setup. And I got better when I started getting rid of the setup and just going punch here, punch here, punch here. And you look at some of the best magicians, they either have the most entertaining setup in the world or they're very punchy. And so from a storytelling point of view, it was getting rid of that unnecessary setup and trying to go for a faster pacing. And that was a very long way to say that. But really, I learned it.
Do you feel like in the mystery genre that there is a similarity in setting up how to make people sort of puzzle over something as there is in creating a magic trick?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And that was, for Angel Killer, I really got to play that up because I was creating these mysteries, these magical kind of mysteries, these crime scenes that I then had to make the most impossible thing in the world. But opposite of magic, our goal of magic is to not show you how this happened. But for there, I had to do a reveal, but make it this kind of credible reveal, and an audience to go, oh, that's interesting. And for mystery pacing, Jim Swain is a fantastic magician, and he's a great mystery writer. Check out Jim Swain. He's got a new novel out. He's a bestseller, and he knew a lot about magic and a lot about technique, and he's a very accomplished detective mystery writer, and I think he's a great example of that. I'm still learning how to apply that.
On the topic of telling a story to support a trick,
Mm-hmm.
you did a great job of incorporating a bit of story into your tricks this evening. Is there a balance to how much story there should be versus how much trick or impact in a presentation, do you feel like?
Yeah, there absolutely is, and I think that different performers, the balance is going to be in a different place. Some magicians, if you're an illusionist and you're on stage, David Copperfield isn't afforded as much time to do a setup as somebody doing a relaxed mentalism show or somebody in a parlor type show or a seance show. He has to have a punchier kind of story and get to the point and the beats. A Penn and Teller can do kind of more story and do philosophical and do political. For me, if I do a story, the story itself has got to have this kind of, like everything I did tonight, the story becomes this absurd kind of like, wow, we're really in a weird place. He's talking about prisons and the Nixon, Watergate, and it's going back to a pencil trick, or, he's trying to convince us he, fought a little monkey, to get to a silly place. So for me, that's how I tend to use it in this situation is the story is to try to get you all the way over here so I can then go here. If that works. Yes, sir.
People come into magic from all kinds of different backgrounds. People coming from theater backgrounds. To me, from what I've seen, you think about things very analytically. You seem like you have the mind of science.